Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, I'm Rohit from LifeSelfMastery.com, and today I'm excited to have Michael Sacca, who's the Director of Business Development and Marketing at Dribble by day, and he is a co-host of RocketShip.fm by night. He's interviewed entrepreneurs like Ryan Hoover, Seth Godin, Sean Ellis, and the list goes on. He has done more than 300 episodes. Michael and his co-host are running this podcasting side project with millions of downloads. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, I would love to know what is your background and how did you get into the crazy world of startups?
Sure. So, I started a digital agency after I had quit my job at a restaurant. I taught myself how to code and started taking on clients that first month, really just saying yes to things I didn't know how to do. And eventually that became a small digital agency. We're about 5 full-time employees, 9 contractors or so. And that's where we got introduced to the world of startups. We started contracting with startups. They would hire us either for application development or design work. And eventually we kind of got the bug where we felt like we were doing so much work for these startups and then they would leave, right? We would never get to do the follow-on project. And so we started building our own. And one of the first projects we did was a language learning app for kids. It's actually still out today, still makes revenue today, and a digital asset management system for small brands. And we sold that about 2 years ago now to Brand AI, which was then acquired by Envision. And so that was really where I kind of got the bug to run my own startups and to actually bring my own ideas to life.
Okay. And I could see that you also work with Crew and Unsplash, and so were you one of the founders of the company?
No, I was the 12th employee at Crew when Unsplash was still a side project, and so I came on to run their business development and partnerships. This was about 4 years ago, and then I led the acquisition of Crew by Dribble when the founders went over to Unsplash to focus there, which they still are today.
Okay, and what is Dribble all about?
So Dribble is the largest design community. So we are a portfolio network for designers. We help them get inspiration, find work, and get full-time employment. And so Dribble has been around for about 10 years, always bootstrapped. We still run that way. We're now, when I joined, I believe I was the 16th employee. We're now 47 in just a year and a half. And so we're growing at a healthy pace, still bootstrapped without raising any capital.
Okay, and what about the marketing agency that you're running? Did you sell it to a company, or are you still running it on the side?
No, we shut it down. It kind of burnt out on doing the client work. It was a great way to start. After 5 years, I had kind of burnt out on the always having to find the next clients while doing the current work. And so I really wanted to find a situation where I could focus on 1 or 2 projects at a time and watch them grow rather than always finding a new project to do the first round.
Okay. And so, I want to know, how did you get about starting your podcast and where did you start in the first place?
Yeah. So we were running a digital agency. We were handling the design and development of these applications, and we really thought we knew what we were doing. And then we built Brandisty, a digital asset management platform, and we realized that we really had no idea how to market, how to reach a new audience. And so we knew how to build stuff. We knew how to build stuff fast, but then we didn't know how to reach the people that would actually buy it. And so that was when I started Rocket Ship in order to talk to people that had already been there, had already done it. And the only way to get them on the phone was to offer them an interview because they weren't going to answer my call otherwise. And so that was about 5 or 6 years ago now that we started. It was really just to learn how to do startup marketing and startup growth.
Okay, and can you talk about the first couple of interviews and how did the launch really happen?
Yeah, so we got lucky. Our first interview was with Ryan Hoover, who had just launched Product Hunt. Product Hunt was kind of a buzz then, but it wasn't what it is today. And so he had just built it as a weekend side project. It was kind of perfect for us because we were focused on bootstrapped businesses when we launched. And so he was actually our first interview, which gave us enough credibility to then go out and get our second interview and our third interview. Probably the first 10 people that we talked to were all well known in the industry, and that really helped give the show some credibility. We were also a niche show in that we were at that time focused on bootstrapping. We're no longer. But we were, and so we were one of the few podcasts that had content for this growing network of people who were really excited about either doing side projects or bootstrapping a software business.
Okay, and what are the favorite people who you have interviewed, and what were your best learnings from them?
Sure. I think the first one that we really captured where I felt like we got something special was Adi Paner from who had just left WooThemes to start a new business. He didn't actually know what it was going to be, and he really opened up and about what entrepreneurship really is and the struggles that he was having starting his second venture after having kind of a big exit with WooThemes. And so that was where I realized that there was something more to the storytelling than just the advice. And that kind of started to change the trajectory of the show, or at least how we thought about the podcast, where, originally we were trying to find tactics and tips to help people build. But then we realized that there was this whole emotional component that really it had to come out in a story, and that's really where we've started to take the podcast today. And that was really the turning point, was talking to Adi. This is probably about 5 years ago.
Okay, so I understand that you work with a co-host and you do it on the side. So do you speak? Do you interview people during the weekends? What is your schedule like when you're trying to build your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. So I generally interview before or after kind of my general work hours. I do work remote, so I am home, so I don't have a commute, and I save that time by not commuting. Dribble is a fully remote company, and so in that time when I would be commuting, I instead am able to line up interviews. We've moved away from doing as many interviews, and we do much shorter interviews. So our interview now is very focused on a particular topic. And so we'll do like a 10-minute interview because we already know the questions that we're going to ask. We consciously moved away from the interview format that we had started with about 2 years ago. And that was to really make time for us to continue doing it. That wasn't such a stress where we had to do so much scheduling, which is awesome if you can do it. We just found that we both work full time. So we had to figure out creative ways to keep the show high quality, but yet move in a slightly different direction.
Okay, so how big is your team when it comes to scheduling and pushing out the content? Is it just you and the co-founder?
That's it. Yeah. So we work with Podglomerate, which is a podcast network now. They handle all of our ad sales, which is nice to be able to get to the point where someone was interested in doing that. And then up until a couple weeks ago, I've done all the editing for the near 400 shows. But we did just bring on an editor who's going to help us put these shows together on a weekly basis, which is great. And then other than that, it's him and I writing and producing and scheduling all the content.
Okay, and how do you go about scripting the episodes and deciding who are the entrepreneurs you would want to interview with?
So this is kind of the hack that we've found. We script everything in the podcast. So we're now focused on topical episodes. So we either try to break down topics, or there's a long running story. Last season, in season 5, we followed 3 entrepreneurs. Actually, the CEO of ChargeBee, Krish, who's in Chennai, India. We followed him for about 12 episodes, and about over the course of 2 months. And then we followed another entrepreneur, VP of growth at Auth0, and a solopreneur from Cranbrook, British Columbia. And so we purposely highlighted people who are not in the States, and who were working on interesting projects. And so we followed them all for 2 or 3 months. So I would do weekly interviews with them in the morning on Friday. And then we built out 12 episodes from that. And so we script every single episode. And then my co-host and I record that script, and then we hand the script and the audio over to our editor now, before I would then take that audio and break it down. But it made it much faster to create a high quality episode where I didn't have to go in and edit each individual interview. And then from the interviews, we would take out 15 to 30 second clips that were relevant to what the topic of the episode was.
Okay, and were you syndicating these small clips and content on different social media channels, or or were you pushing out the same content on these podcasting apps?
So we would push it out through our podcasting apps. We have a decent subscriber base on iTunes and a couple of the popular apps, and then we do some on Twitter. Honestly, we're probably not the best at social content. So we do put out we'll cut up some 1-minute clips and put them out on Twitter, just as kind of an episode preview. Other than that, it's all kind of word of mouth growth.
Okay. So, I want to come to which are the best equipments and tools for, pushing our podcast, a listener who wants to create their own podcast. What is your advice on that? So
we started out with the $100 USB microphones, and that got us through the first year. Now we use a Heel PR40 microphone, which is they run about $450 US. It's probably the best microphone that I've heard in that price point, and I've purchased 5 or 6 at this point, but I keep going back to this one. That's probably my favorite microphone. Run that into a Focusrite, and then we use Adobe Audition because I already pay for the Adobe's Creative Cloud. So I use their audio editor, which is actually incredibly powerful, to do all the mixing.
Okay, and I would like to know how much of the revenue do you generate from these sponsorships, and how much downloads have you had, if I may?
Yeah, so we let's see, when we're in season, we do about 10,000 a month in revenue, and when our downloads, it varies on the content. So we do around 100 to 150,000 a month, depending on if we're actively promoting or not.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you the only one who's looking at sponsorships, or have you outsourced it to an agency who's going to look for sponsors for your show?
Yeah, we signed with the Podglomerate Network, so they handle all of our sponsorships. I did sell our sponsorships for about the last 4.5 years, but for this last season, we signed with Podglomerate, and they have been absolutely amazing, and they have kept us sold out ever since. So I'm really happy. I would advise anyone. We give up kind of like Apple style. You give up some of your revenue. But the relief of not having to sell sponsorships every week and instead focus on the quality of the show has been incredible.
Absolutely, because it becomes a second job in itself. Finding out sponsors for the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's the best way to grow a podcast which would have, let's say less than 1,000 downloads? What would be your advice on that? If just you're pushing out content, what is the best way to grow your podcast from there?
So podcasting, especially like entrepreneurial podcasting, it's very busy, right? There's a lot of shows. So I think if your show, one of the things that we do not have anymore, but we did at the beginning, was we had an opinion. And that gave us an advantage over some of the other interview shows in that people knew why they were listening. So we weren't a broad show for everyone. We were specifically a show that had advice for bootstrapped entrepreneurs. And we ran that for the first 100 episodes. And we became known as the podcast that's focused on bootstrapping versus venture capital, which is what everyone was talking about at the time. It still is, really. Venture capital is the big news story, and it hits the big news cycle. Bootstrapping isn't as sexy, right? You don't really hear about companies' revenues. So if your show has an opinion and people know why they're tuning in, I think that helps the word of mouth grow. So because they have a reason, it's not just they did another interview with Seth Godin. It's they did an interview with Seth Godin about how to bootstrap your company. And so that gives a bit of context to why a listener would be listening. And we didn't talk to Seth Godin about bootstrapping. We interviewed him way after, but just as an example. So I think there has to be a purpose for the show, and that helps it grow. I think there's a lot of people that do growth today better than us. But I would concentrate on discoverability and the topics that you're writing about, making sure that you have those basic SEO practices in your description so that people searching through the various podcast stores can find you for a reason that's purposeful. So they know why they're hitting play. And we have had some success through PR. So, if you can find a nationally topical issue that you're able to speak on, you can become part of that national conversation. I think that's also really helpful. There's also the influencer angle, which we've always avoided. So I don't know if I'm the best person to speak on that. But I've seen people be very successful taking that more influencer angle. It's just not for me.
Okay. And Michael, have you also done speaking engagements to grow your podcast or to grow your brand, or is it focusing only on your podcast for now?
So I can't say that they've been incredibly successful. In terms of getting like direct, like you speak at an event and you have 1,000 new subscribers, it's usually not that linear. And so generally the speaking is great for your own personal brand. Some people will check out your podcast if they like what you have to say. But that is a bit more roundabout way of doing the promotion. But I do speaking from time to time. And I can't say that it hurts, but I don't think it's a surefire way to grow your podcast listener base.
Okay, and you mentioned that you work in a remote job. So what are the pros and cons of working in a remote job? I know that a lot of people are, especially the bootstrap community. There are a lot of remote jobs which are happening. But what are the pros and cons, and how do you adjust your side hustle with your job?
Yeah, so the pros of working remote are having a bit more ownership of your time. I don't have to do an hour commute to and from an office. The cons are that I don't get to work in an office closely with the people on my team. So it's a lot of Slack, it's a lot of video calls, which is great. But you do lose a bit of that human connection. And so I think as remote work becomes more and more the norm for people, we're going to have to adjust, right? We're going to have to adjust to how we work, to how we communicate. And oftentimes communication happens in and around the office, right? People going out for lunch, they're talking about work. This is how ideas spread. In remote, you don't have that, right? You don't have that kind of organic connection. So one of the biggest things that I've had to work on is just my constant communication, especially as on the leadership team of Dribble. We just always have to be talking and making sure that we're talking to everyone, so that the vision and the direction of the company is properly communicated, because it's not going to get communicated through osmosis in the office. If we don't say it, it's not going to get heard. And so that's probably the biggest challenge of remote is the communication side. Although I think as it becomes more of the norm, it'll become easier and easier for people. But I've been remote for about 4 years, and it's been amazing to be so close to family, and to not have to waste my time in a car or on a bus commuting to and from work.
Absolutely, and it's become quite a norm. But it looks like for the VC world and startups over there, it's not that much of a norm. But maybe in future, say 10, 15 years down the line, who knows?
Yes, we're hoping.
So the next segment is what I call the top three, where I ask them 3 questions and you can answer them in 30 seconds or less. So are you ready to take it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So what's your favorite business book?
So my favorite business book, I just read a book by Byung-Chul Han called The Burnout Society. And it talks a lot about the systems that we create as entrepreneurs, as software developers, and its effect on society. And so it's really helped me to think about social networks and time on platform, those kind of issues that we often tries to optimize for, and its effect on humanity. So I think it's an incredibly important book for anyone building software today to read.
Okay, and if you could go back in time when you started working on your agency and your business ventures, what is the one thing you would have focused on?
Probably more on sales and less on design. I think in the early days, it was so much fun to design the interactions of software. That was really the exciting part why I got into building this. But the biggest thing that we didn't do right in the beginning, or at least myself, was the customer development and the actual sales process, which we would often do after the software was built. And so if I was going to go back on some of those early projects, I would have focused on the market first and the design and development second.
Okay. And what's your favorite online tool, for example, Gmail or Slack?
Sure. My favorite online tool right now, I don't love Slack. I don't love Gmail. Right now, I would say Zoom. We're on this right now, but this is where I feel like the magic happens in remote life is through these video calls and through conversations. It's the only way that I connect with my team all day. And so, I probably send out 12, 15 Zoom links a day to various members of the team. And I think that the fact that they've made video so easy and that we can get so many people on a call conveniently has really changed the way remote work happens today.
Okay. And do you use Zoom or Skype for recording on podcast?
So I actually use Zencaster for recording. It does a local recording for every participant and then breaks it up into separate waves for editing. So that's been awesome for podcast recording. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's doing virtual interviews.
Oh, okay. Got it. And what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Rocketship?
Sure. Yeah. So our site's at rocketship.fm. You can search Rocketship FM in any podcast app. The new season will be launching in probably about a month now. We're doing a season on Blockland, which is an initiative inside of Cleveland where the Cleveland government is actually pushing forward blockchain initiatives. And it's all started by a car salesman, Bernie Moreno. And so it's an incredibly fascinating story, and we'll be spending our whole next season talking to government legislators and people that are inside and part of the initiative in Cleveland. So you can subscribe on any major podcast. You can reach me at Michael Sacca on Twitter or most social networks.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming onto the show and speaking to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.